Imagine for a moment, tomorrow morning Canadians wake up to an unbelievable announcement. Ottawa, after a historic vote, declares that the country has agreed to join the United States. The red and white maple leaf flag still waves, but it is about to be lowered to make way for the stars and stripes. Canada is no longer an independent nation. It officially becomes the 51st U.S. state. This idea may seem crazy, almost unrealistic, yet let's ask ourselves, what would this actually change? How would such a disruption transform North America and the balance of the world? In this video, we will explore the political, economic, social, cultural, and geopolitical consequences of such a scenario. Prepare yourself because you are about to see a completely different world. Canada's independence is deeply rooted in its identity. From a British colony to a dominion and then a sovereign state in 1867, the country has carved its own path, building unique institutions, a bilingual culture, and a distinct role on the international stage. If Canada suddenly decided to join the United States, it would be one of the largest geopolitical upheavals in modern history. A G7 member would disappear, a nation respected worldwide for its diplomacy and independence. Politically, a huge question arises. How do you integrate such a vast territory? Canada is the second largest country in the world by land area. Absorption by Washington would mean redefining the U.S. Constitution, reorganizing Congress, the Senate, and the administration. Would Canada become a single giant state, or be divided into multiple new states such as British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, and Alberta? If so, the U.S. could grow from 50 to possibly 65 states, dramatically changing political balance in Washington. The electoral weight would also shift. Tens of millions of new voters would participate in presidential elections. Both Democrats and Republicans would have to rethink their strategies as Canadians' priorities differ from Americans. Economically, integrating Canada into the U.S. would create an unprecedented giant. Currently, the U.S. has the world's largest economy, around $27 trillion GDP. Canada contributes roughly $2.2 trillion. Combined, the GDP would reach nearly $30 trillion, further extending American dominance over China's $18 trillion. But it's not just numbers. Canada brings massive strategic resources. One of the world's largest oil producers, Alberta tar sands, huge reserves of natural gas, uranium, timber, and rare minerals, vast agricultural lands complementing U.S. farming power. Becoming the 51st state would grant the U.S. almost total energy autonomy. Imports from the Middle East would drop dramatically. Washington would control one of the world's largest energy reservoirs directly. Trade would also transform. No more borders, no more tariffs. Goods would move freely from Mexico to Vancouver, creating a North American economic zone even stronger than the European Union. Yet there would be losers. Canadians, accustomed to a more generous social system with universal health care, lower tuition, social benefits, could see these protections vanish under the more individualistic U.S. model. The shock to the Canadian middle class would be significant. One of the biggest challenges would be identity. Canada is not just a copy of the U.S. Its culture, history, and values differ. Language is key. Quebec is predominantly French-speaking, and protecting French is central to its identity. Becoming a U.S. state would raise explosive questions. Would French retain any official status? Would Americans accept a second official language in their constitution? Mentality also matters. Canadians are often seen as peaceful, consensus-oriented, and multilateral. Americans, in contrast, emphasize individualism, patriotism, and military power. Merging these worldviews would inevitably create tension. Protests would likely erupt in Quebec, possibly fueling separatist movements. Provinces like Alberta might demand more autonomy. Unification would not be smooth sailing. Indigenous populations would also face challenges. In Canada, First Nations and Inuit peoples have specific recognized rights. In the U.S., the situation is different and often more conflicted. Combining systems could reignite tensions. Another key aspect, the military. Canada, though a NATO member, doesn't have a military as strong as the U.S., but it has vast, strategically important territories, including in the Arctic. U.S. control of Canada would give Washington dominance over the northern continent, providing a massive geopolitical edge, particularly against Russia. The Arctic is increasingly coveted due to climate change opening new maritime routes and releasing natural resources. With Canada, the U.S. would become nearly untouchable, protected by two oceans, a vast landmass, and almost limitless resources. For the rest of the world, this would be a shock. Russia and China would see this merger as a direct threat. Global balance would tilt further toward Washington. What about the international scene? Canada would lose its independent voice at the UN. Its respected role as a peaceful mediator would disappear, replaced by the American voice. For Europe, this is significant. European nations have long viewed Canada as a moderate ally, a softer alternative to the US. With Ottawa gone, Europe would face an even more powerful North American bloc. Africa and Asia would also lose a valuable diplomatic partner. Canada invested heavily in development aid, humanitarian missions, and education. Would the US continue this work? Not necessarily. Who would benefit? The US, stronger economically, militarily, and strategically. Multinational corporations, a giant market without barriers. American political elites, increased power on the global stage. But the losers, ordinary Canadians, losing social systems and institutions. Francophones risking cultural influence. Indigenous peoples needing to renegotiate rights in a very different system. The rest of the world losing an independent diplomatic actor, facing a super empire harder to balance. Should we imagine a world where Canada becomes the 51st U.S. state? On paper, it creates an unmatched superpower, huge territory, nearly 400 million people, $30 trillion GDP, global dominance. In reality, it would be a complicated union, fraught with cultural, political, and social tensions. Canada would lose its identity, and the U.S. would inherit massive challenges. Ultimately, the question isn't just, what if Canada joined the U.S., but how far would a nation go for power and how far would a people go to preserve its identity? You've now explored a scenario that completely changes our view of the world. And now, here's a question for you. If you were Canadian, would you be ready to become American? And on the American side, would you truly welcome Canada as your 51st state? Share your perspective in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinion. And remember to like this video and subscribe so you won't miss the next big scenarios we explore.